Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're on board. I can see that you are, and I apologise that we're about 5 minutes late. Just a couple of, well, not a couple, just one technical hitch, and my apologies for that. It just took us 5 minutes to figure out what was working or not working, and get it rectified. And hopefully we're up and running. Thanks for joining me today. I'll do the introduction on behalf of of Peter Jeffrey from Economic Development, and welcome you aboard. As you know, Economic Development for City Greater Bendigo have sponsored this series of webinars, of which this is the final one for the series, the 11th one in the series. Hope that you've tracked them all through. But may I say, on behalf of the Economic Development, how pleased we've been to have so many people engaged with this program and coming on board and listening to the webinars, not just live but also afterwards. Pardon me, with replays, etc., and downloads. So great to see. Thank you for pardon me, for being on board for this particular one, which is, of course, can a one-page business plan really work? Well, obviously the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is always going to be yes. Of course it is, and I want to show you how to go about planning. And I think the deal is that a lot of people don't plan because they think planning is difficult. I think that it's a big deal. And what I wanted to make the point here is it doesn't have to be a big deal. That simple is better than complicated. And in terms of why I advocate for a one-page plan is because of its simplicity. It doesn't necessarily mean that the planning that goes into it is as simple, but a complicated plan will not be used. A complicated anything will not be used, and so keeping it simple really is quite important. Now, moving forward, of course, Peter normally does my introduction. For those of you who haven't been on the webinar before, and I do see a couple of new names of people, and thank you very much for jumping on board. Most people who have been on it before probably have I've been connected with, or in some way that a little bit about me. There's my very short bio, so I'm sure in the period that I've actually had it on the screen you've been able to read that. Moving forward, of course, that my big deal, of course, is that for those that do know me know how passionate I am about the success of small businesses. I think they are the heart of business globally. I think they are the major employer of people globally, and I think that economies predominantly are successful or not as a consequence of the success or otherwise of small business, and that's why I'm so passionate about them. I think they are the heart of a community, and they need to be nurtured and encouraged as much as we possibly can. Okay, so let's kick off our content this month with why plan. Now you'll probably appreciate the photograph is a picture of poor planning. I would imagine too much to carry for the poor old donkey. But let's have a look and see why planning, in my opinion, why planning is so important. And it's one of those activities that sit in what we call the zone. That means that they are very important, but generally not considered to be urgent. Can a business survive without a plan? Well, yes, it can. Can it grow without a plan? Probably, but it's more likely that both of those things will be much more successful with a plan. When we come to work every day, knowing not just what to do, but why we're doing it, makes quite a difference. Pardon me. quite a difference to how effective we are. So moving through these leverage, well, what that means is that I can plan once and then I can act many times. So I only have to plan once every so often, whether that's, in my case, I advocate for every quarter, every 90 days. It can be once a year. It can be once every 5 years where we set a strategic plan. But what it means is that we put a certain number of days worth of effort in and we end up with many days worth of work. And that's what we term leverage, ever more with ever less. So let's assume that we can do, let's say, a strategic plan, a 5-year strategic plan. Now, typically, companies might do a 2-3 day or 4-day, let's call them retreats or whatever they might be, but planning meetings. Now they might do, think about the leverage of that. So I spend a week planning my next 5 years. 5 years is around about 15, 16, 1800 days. So to spend 5 days planning 1800 days sounds like good leverage to me. To spend half an hour at the start of every week planning the week sounds like good leverage to me. So that's what we mean by leverage, and why planning is one of the reasons why we plan, because it allows us to think once and act as a consequence of that many times. It also gives us context, which means that we understand why we're doing things. You know, it's all in line with a longer term outcome. So we've got context to our activity. We're doing things, but we're doing things, and this is the next thing, on purpose. So we understand that we've got an outcome that we're trying to achieve. We've got a purpose. The reason why we're doing this activity is because we want to achieve, you know, the longer term outcomes. It enables us to be coordinated, what to do first and what to do next and what to do after that, because the plan is telling us we've already thought about what's the progression, or what's the prioritization of what we've got to do. So it gives us a sense of coordination. My next thing is, it says it gives us a sense of progression. We can actually work through the plan and we can see where we are as a part of that plan. When we started it at the start of this year and it was a 12-month plan, we can see where are we in terms of where we thought we'd be. So we work through a plan, which gives us a sense of progression. And finally, and don't get me wrong, there's probably more bullet points that I could have put, but finally, in mind, it gives us a focus. It enables us to understand what we are going to do, and just as importantly, it gives us an understanding of what not to do. Because there's plenty, the opposite of focus is distraction. There are plenty of things that I would venture to say that distract you in your business, that can become a distraction, that you get sidetracked. A plan gives you focus and says, no, this is what I'm working on, this is what's in my plan, and if it's not in my plan, I won't do it. I might consider it in my next plan, but even in considering it, I have to make a consideration as to whether this new thing that's come along is more important than what I've currently got in my plan. You see, so it gives us an opportunity to create focus and, by definition, a lack of distraction. So they're my reasons for planning and why planning is valuable. And we need to remind ourselves of it because, as I said before, it falls into the box of important but not urgent. That's generally the box that most people put planning in. It's a zone activity, and therefore it's easy to not do it and still feel like we're actually working, but are we working efficiently, effectively, in the right direction, and all of those sorts of things. Excellent. So I thought it interesting to give you the definition of what exactly is a plan. And excuse me for reading what I'm sure you can already perfectly see. But a plan is a written account of intended future course of action aimed at achieving specific goals or objectives within a specified time frame. It explains in detail what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, how it will be done, and who will do it. That's a definition. I didn't actually make that definition up. I think I will have taken it from a source. But there's a few important, obviously, words there. A written account. You know, everybody's got a plan, but often it's in their head. So this is the opportunity to get it out of the head and onto, you know, paper or in digital form. So a written account. Now, in intended future course of action, this is what my intentions are going forward in working towards a specific objective. Now, we'll talk about specificity through the webinar, and that's interesting in terms of often the goals aren't fail in terms of their specificity. And the time frame is important, because to sort of say I'm going to achieve X is good. It gives you direction, but I'm going to achieve X by this time next year gives us a much a better defined plan and a better defined outcomes in terms of outcomes against time frames. So that's what our plan definition is. So we want to look and see what are the must-haves of a plan, what needs to be in the plan. Okay, the first thing is a rationale. Why are we doing this? Why is it important that the outcomes are achieved? So a rationale as to why for the outcomes, and usually, guys, this is generally related to personal, either personal goals or certainly personal pursuits, let's say, and objectives. So my goal for myself is to achieve a particular environment, lifestyle, rewards, or whatever they might be. The function, the fundamentally there, they exist for a reason. Let's make sure that in our plan we understand what that reason is. So that's the why. Why is this important that we achieve the next thing? The what? The objective. A plan needs to have a focus point, an ultimate outcome, a single large objective that everything that we're doing is working towards. What is that? A plan must have a set of steps. That's the how. How are we going to achieve this? So these are the steps that we need to take to achieve this objective, and the reason why we need to achieve this objective is the rationale as to why. So you can see how this is sort of starting to break down. It needs, as I said before, to have a time frame. When are we going to achieve it by? Without a time frame, it's open-ended. In fact, without a time frame, they're not goals. Goals must have time frames, or they're dreams. Okay, one day I will. Once upon a time, you know, one day I will become, or one day I will achieve, or one day I will go to. That's a dream. If we put a time frame on it, it becomes a goal. So the when is very important. And then, as I said before, accountabilities need to be a part of the plan as well. Who will do each of these steps by when? So that's our accountabilities. And you can see how well this binds a team together in particular. And to be quite honest, this is where they're most important when you've got more than one person, so a team. It's why it needs to be written. So, you know, the entire team understands who's got to do what by when and what steps and how they're going to do it. And they're all tied to the same achievements, and they all understand why that's important. So I hope that makes sense to everybody listening. Okay, let's look now at the process of planning, and I want to show you the skeleton, if you like, the framework on which to plan. So every plan, every objective starts with, as I said before, a dream. if we don't imagine, then nothing really follows. Everything starts from an idea, and to have a lot of great ideas is the first part of planning. So first of all, we've got to actually have dreams. We turn our dreams into goals. Step 2. Step 3 is we plan how to achieve those goals. And of course, step 4 is that we actually, first of all, we plan the actions, and then we action the plan. First of all, we decide what we're going to do, and then the last part of success, if you like, is implementing the plan. And I put that in, even though I know this is all about planning, I need to actually draw your the attention to the realization that plans are useless unless you actually implement them. It's all well and good to develop plans, but without the actions that follow the plan, of course, nothing actually happens. So there's two things that can happen. You can actually take actions without a plan, that is random mayhem, or you can actually have plans without actions, and that produces actually nothing. So if you're going to fail, I'd suggest action is the most important part of it, because at least you're doing something and you'll achieve outcomes. What outcomes you'll achieve, that's the thing. Without a plan, you could be doing a lot of things that don't lead to the objectives that you've set. So I ask the question now, how do you rate? So here's an activity, and I'm hoping that everybody's sitting in front of their screen listening to this and has a piece of paper and a pen and making notes. What I'd like you to do right now is write that formula down, dreams, and underneath that goals, and underneath that plans, and underneath that actions. The multiplier is fine. Next to each of the 4 terms, I'd like you to think about how strong or weak you might be. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being, quite poor at it, and 10 being really strong in it, I'd like you to rate yourself now against each of those four aspects. Rate how strong are you at dreaming, and how big are those dreams. Rate yourself 1 to 10. How good are you or poor are you on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of actually setting goals? And this is in terms of, historically, let's say, how would you rate yourself historically in terms of that? Are you a strong goal setter, or have you always thought goals are sort of a waste of time per se? 1 to 10. Now, come to the next one, plans. So rate yourself 1 to 10 on the actual act of planning and sitting down and actually producing a plan, 1 to 10. And then finally, how would you rate yourself on taking action against those plans, or just taking action in general? Are you just immediately, take action all the time? Do you procrastinate? Where do you rate yourself from 1 to 10? So fair to say that the maximum score that you can get is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, which of course is 10,000. I wonder, if you do your maths, what sort of number that you come up with out of 10,000. The number overall is useful. The rating within each of them tells us a little bit more. So where do you need to strengthen, and what are you already strong in, but where are your constraints? This is a good exercise to determine what you might need to concentrate more effort into to produce a number that ultimately would be closer to 10,000. So clearly the low numbers are really holding you back. Now, I know we're talking about planning, but at the end of the day, what this webinar is really all about is the first 3 steps. So let's look at the first step. Step 1, as I mentioned before, is dream. Now, what does that mean? Well, what that means is you've literally got to start to put yourself in a future situation, a future time frame. I've always tended to be relatively, let's say, good at my imagination. I can picture things. How well can you do that? Do you picture outcomes? Now, a lot of people have said to me that they're not very good at visualization, that they're not very good at dreaming. My response to that is, do you worry? Are you good at worrying? Because worrying is simply the same thing but with a negative connotation. So we think dreaming is more in the positive. We look for dreams being, positive images of the future. I have a dream of traveling by train through all of Europe, for instance, and I can see myself doing that if that's my dream. So I'm quite connected to it because I can literally visualize it, and the visualization, even made even stronger, becomes a real a real sensory response to that. So worry is exactly the same thing. It's preempting something that you're anticipating in the future, but worry, of course, means that it has a negative connotation, so that the thing that you're preempting that's going to happen in the future is something that is a negative, whereas a dream is preempting something in the future that is a positive. So if you can worry, you can dream. If you can imagine. Now, think about how are you developing dreams? How are you expanding your imagination in terms of experiences? How do you know what's out there? This is the sort of stuff, you talk to other people, they tell you about trips they've made, or you see somebody else's house, or you see a car driving down the road, or you listen to the story about people's holidays. You read magazines about experiences. Dare I say, you watch television, although that won't probably give you a whole lot, other than somebody else's reality. So I think that what this is really all about is the power and the environments that you allow yourself to exposure to actually develop that set of dreams that you have. Different methods to develop this. Some people, meditate, if you like. They look for input. They look for data that feeds their dreams. They also surround themselves with people that encourage those dreams. Often talked about in other sessions and whatnot, dream takers and dream makers. I think there's a whole lot more dream takers out there than there are dream makers. There's a lot of people that when you talk about your dreams that will tell you how ridiculous that they are, how impossible that they are, how unaligned they are with their own dreams is pretty much what they're saying. I think what you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you don't allow that to happen. You've got to stick with this sort of long-term, big picture type of thing. So you can see where we're starting here. We're starting at the big picture. We're starting at the top, and we're going to work our way down rather than do lots of stuff and see what happens. We're going to predetermine what we want to happen, and then we're going to plan what we need to do to make those things happen. That is fundamentally a plan. And in business and in your personal life, it all starts with a vision. How do you want to live? What do you want your life to look like? And therefore, if I connect that now with business, what do you want the business to look like that actually fuels that life? So we can go one step above the business and talk and say, okay, from the owner's perspective, that's where we start. We start, what do you want? What do you want personally? And therefore, what do you want from your business? What is the vision that you have for your business. Okay, and is that in line with your view of with what you want for yourself? I'll give you an example of a client of mine that started from exactly that point and said, well, before I've designed the business, I know what I would like to achieve, but before I design the business, let's talk about how it's got to work for me. And we talked about things like where does it operate from? How, what's the time commitment to these sorts of things? And they very much started to shape the actual business that person went about creating. Because if it didn't fit with the personal vision, then they were at odds with each other. So we bring this back to the business vision. So what do you want your business to look like? And the important thing is, what do you want your business to look like when it's finished? So what's the finished product look like? Now, I get that we're talking about overall vision here, and therefore there's no time frame connected. But if I then applied a time frame that said, what do you want your business to look like in 5 years' time, or in 3 years' time, or in 10 years' time? What's the big deal? What do you want it to look like? If you haven't sat down and written that out, my suggestion is the very first thing you should do after this webinar is to sit down, open a blank page, and start to write what you want your business to look like when within whatever time frame you've picked. The longest of visions is what do you want to look like when it's finished, and put no time frame on it. But what's finished look like for you? Nobody else can choose your vision other than you. Lots of people will want to, but you're the only person that can determine what the end goal actually is. And that's a challenge for a lot of people. Go, I don't actually know. But have you ever sat down, asked yourself the question, what do I want it to look like when it's finished, and just start to write? Now, if that takes half a page, if it takes 10 pages, if you wrote a book on it, even better. But at the end of the day, there's no limit to that, and there's no limit to the detail that you can actually put in there. In fact, the more detail, the more likely it is to be achieved, and the more power that you put behind it. So clarity and power go together in terms of vision. The clearer the vision, the more powerful it becomes for you, and importantly, for other people in your business as well. So this is really important, because in terms of if there is anybody else working in your business, do they understand your vision? I think from this, hopefully you get a real sense of what vision actually means. It's not a vision statement, it's actually the vision itself. The vision statement is a well-crafted set of words that describe that, but the power lies in the emotion that sits behind why that's important to you. So why is that? Remember I said before, the what is the vision. Why is that important to you is even more powerful. Okay. All right, so moving on, he says. So we move down from dream and vision to now actually breaking that down into a set of goals. Now, how many of them? There's no rule, everyone. There's no rule, guys. There's no rule that says you must have 3 or 5 or 7 or 11 or 1. What the rule is that the goals that you set are milestones towards the vision. So if when you sit down and write, this is what I need to, what my business looks like when it's done, I can now actually go, okay, goals are time framed and they're specific. In fact, they're more than that. They're SMART, and the acronym SMART comes from they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant. Relevant to what? Relevant to the vision, and they're time framed. So this is where the dream, the vision, is broken down now into milestones. Now, the milestones the size of them and what they are is linked to the time frame. So if you sort of said, okay, this is my vision, so my milestones will be, I could end up with 3 or 4 or 5 sub-parts or sub-goals. Each of those goals you can break down based on the time frame. So they might be 3-year goals. Well, if they were 3-year goals, what's the 1-year goal that goes with that? And then what's the 90-day milestone or goal that goes in line with that? So we're producing, if you like, parallel lines. We're producing a vision overall that breaks down into sub-goals, and each of those goals predominantly continue to break down. I hope that makes sense. But the important point here is that, number one, they must be specific. More, less aren't specific words. How much more? How much less? I want to make more money. How much more? 10% more, or make it a number? So when you set goals, make them numbers. Be specific about what the outcome actually is, because what you want to be able to do is, from a measurability point of view, you want to understand, have I achieved the goal? Not do I think I've achieved the goal, but have you actually achieved the goal? Has it hit that number? I remember perhaps an example, last night I just happened to catch the end of the Biggest Loser, and if they set a goal to lose, let's say 80 kilos, that's specific, it's measurable. Is it achievable? Well, not if you only weigh 90 kilos to start with. So it would lose itself on achievability, and within a certain time frame. Now, what that means is that if you set a goal to lose 80 kilos and you lost 75, you would know that because of the specificity. If you just said, my goal is to lose weight, well, 75 kilos or 5 kilos or 1 kilo is losing weight. But they lose their power if they're not specific, and they lose their context as well. So make sure that when you set a goal as a subset of your vision, that you use specific and measurable those are objective in terms of you've specified and you're able to measure it. Now you ask the question, is that achievable? Well, is it achievable in that time frame? The two things often go together. The achievable and time framed often go together. What's achievable in 12 months, in 12 months might not be achievable in, say, 90 days. What's achievable in 3 years might not be achievable in 1. So this is the sort of the reality check, if you like, that it's achievable within that time frame. And how do we normally know that it's achievable at all? Well, has anybody else ever done it? If anybody else has ever done it, I guess you'd have to say it's achievable. You haven't, but that doesn't mean it's not achievable. And then the R, the relevant, means is it in line with the overall direction? So yes, I can have specific and measurable. Yes, I can have achievable and time framed. I have to ask the question, is it relevant to the direction that I want to go? Is it relevant to the vision that I want to, ultimate vision that I want to achieve? Now you've got a set of goals that really are meaningful. Okay. The next level then is, and you thought that it was just going to be about the plan, but of course the plan comes from those first two steps. You have to go through the first two steps to be able to say, well, plan what? What are you planning? Planning is a set, let's go to the next slide, is a set of sequential steps required to achieve that what. So I have to start with the what. In Stephen Covey or Michael Gerber's words, I have to start with the end in mind. So I'm starting at the goal, and now I'm simply saying, what is the series of steps that I need to implement to achieve that goal? Now, will they all be steps that you know how to do? Probably not. Will you need to learn something to achieve each of those steps? We certainly need to do something to achieve each of those steps. So a plan is simply then going to be, what is the steps that I need to take to achieve that goal? Don't worry about the time frame at the moment, but what are the steps that I need to take? Now, I'll give you the next visual, which will give you some idea of how to start to lay this out. I've done a lot of different planning methods, I suppose, over the years and years and years, a lot of different ways of doing it. I find this to be very simple. So the KISS principle, keep it simple, works. As I said before, it always works. So on one side, this is a couple of A3 sheets of paper, or it could be a wall it could be a roll-out piece of paper. It doesn't really matter what it is, but at the end of the day, what you're going to be able to do is say, okay, at the top of the page, I'm going to put what the vision is, what's the driver. Down the side of the page, left or right, doesn't really matter. I'm going to put what the specific goals are within the time frame. Now, across the page, I'm going to start to write on, and this is the way I tend to do it, on sticky notes, each step. So I'm going to write step by step, each step on a separate sticky note. What I can do then is I can start to actually put these against the objective, the goal, and I can start to, I understand the steps, and then I can start to actually move them around so that the time frames that I give each step are appropriate against what I understand to be a reasonable allocation of time to that step. So if you think about that, it becomes very simple to actually say, okay, my long-term objective is in front of me, plastered on the wall, plastered at the top of the page. The time frame is what time frame that you're allocating to this planning. Now, if this is if left to right is a year, well, then it's a year. Then I'd divide it up into, January, February, March, April, May, etc. If the time frame was a quarter, I would divide that up into 13 weeks. So 12 months or 13 weeks. If the time frame was a month, you divide it up into however many days there are in that month, 31 days, 30 days, 28, 29, whatever it might be. So the time frame simply determines the periods across the page. The outcome is still related to it. The steps are still related to it. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, realistically, I understand this is my outcome. This is the goal. I've got to think through this and go, what are the steps starting from the start or starting from the end and working back? What is the thing that needs to occur before that happens? What would I need to do to enable that to happen? What's the step before that? What's the step before that? I can't tell you from your mind's point of view whether you work better going forward, going step 1 to step 12, or whether you work better understanding what the last step is and then what has to happen before that, what would need to happen before that. Different people's brains work different ways, and both of those are valid. But basically, it's either going to be what are the progressive steps that I need to achieve to, what are the progressive steps that I need to implement to achieve that outcome, or what is the outcome and I can work back from that. But I've found that the simple one-pager that looks like this, that has the steps. Now, the reason I use sticky notes is that I can start to move these around. I can start to, if I've got multiple goals from top to bottom, I can start to get an idea of how this all works together. If I only had one goal, I can time frame that one goal out step by step by step. I can say, okay, this step I'm going to allow 2 weeks for, I guess. This step I'm going to allow 1 week for. The next step I'm going to allow 3 weeks for. And I can build those across the page, progressively. Once I've got more than one goal at a time, I might need to juggle those around a little bit so that I'm not over-committing in one period and under-committing in another. So hopefully that makes sense, and is why sticky notes work well, because you can literally pull them off, move them along, move them to wherever you like, in reference to the whole plan, not just that specific goal. As I said, if you've only got one, it's pretty much time frame. Once you've got two, that each of the time frames have to be considered against each other as well. So that's why the sticky note thing works pretty well. Now, I make the point, understanding, having a perfect knowledge of exactly what to do within each of these sticky notes doesn't need to be known. The sticky note could be research something so that the next one says that is implementable. So research is an action. In the picture that you're looking at, the pink sticky notes are outcomes. They are goals. The yellows or the greens are actually actions. So remember, a goal is an outcome. A step is an action. So the steps need to be actionable items, which means they nearly write actions starting with verbs or to do something, not an outcome in itself. So hopefully that makes sense. To do. Make sure that the actions start with to do, and that the outcomes are outcomes in their own right, not actions. Hopefully we're good with that. So moving forward then, we also then need to understand, and I've already said when and who. I'll go back to the slide previously after this one, but when and who are essential. So the when, going back to this, is what box am I putting it in, left or right, be it the month or the week or the day, depending on what the time frame of the plan is. But who can do each step? Who is responsible for each step? Can also then be allocated on the I'm going to use the term sticky note, on the step. So once I've determined what the step is and where I need to put it on the plan, I can then simply go, okay, whose job is it to actually implement that strategy or that task or that step? So I can actually allocate who quite easily this way as well. Okay, so that allows us to understand the what to do, the step, when to do it, and who's responsible for implementing that step. Now this is, as you can tell, this might look extraordinarily messy, but it's an extraordinarily powerful visual planner. It might look messy. You can make this as neat and tidy as you like. You can take this thing down and transfer it into a spreadsheet, and transfer it into a planning software. You can transfer it into, literally you can take, as this one is, you can take a photograph of it, or you can actually physically have it up on the wall. It doesn't matter how you refine the presentation of it. The most important thing is that it's actually there, sitting in front of you, and that's important, that it needs to be that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that before we finish. So we've got the what we need to achieve, we've got why we need to achieve it, we've got the sub goals specified, and we've got the steps. We've got the steps allocated to time frames, and we've allocated a person who's responsible for that step. Now, the person who's responsible may not be the doer, but they're certainly responsible for getting that step done. Most often they will be the doer, but particularly in the smaller businesses, in fact, your name might be on all of them, quite frankly, but that doesn't matter as long as you understand that your name is on all of them, or most of them, or some of them, or none of them for that matter. You know, but somebody's name's got to be on them, or they'll just be sticky notes that sit there and nothing actually happens. So the question now is, how will you display it, how will you use it, and how will you stay accountable to it? Because this becomes part of the actionable side of things. I've personally found that the display of this is very, very important. It needs to be somewhere that you see very often, if not all the time. Plans on shelves, in books on shelves, don't get implemented. We don't remember the content. It's not in our face. We've got to, we as human beings, we seem to need this. We need for it to be everywhere we look. Can it be on your screen? Can you turn it into a screensaver? Can you post it up as on your desk? Do you put it on your mobile phone? Your iPad? How do you display this thing? You can see this picture, which I took, which I loved. It's the entire room. So yours probably won't be maybe this complicated, and it might be not this big, but I think displaying it is a big part of being able to use it. So where you put it. Now, how do you stay accountable to it? My suggestion is this: if you're a very accountable person and you can stick to this and you can tick off the tasks as you do them. Of course, the variability means that if something goes wrong, the sticky note principle means that I can shuffle a few things around if an unexpected thing comes up, and I can time frame my plan a little bit. I can move the sticky notes by a week or whatever. But importantly, how do you stay accountable to it? If it's on display, that's a good start. My suggestion is that you share it with somebody else, with at least one other person, and ask that person to keep you accountable to the plan. What's that mean? Well, they give you a call every week and say, so how are you travelling against your plan? Because did you achieve this, and this? So accountability. Some form of accountability, whether it's your business partner, a colleague, a friend, a relative, whoever it might be. I think it requires a person to keep you accountable, because we all know that, left to our own devices, most of us can let ourselves down. So put it up, display it, use it by actually saying, okay, every week I can go through my plan and I can go straight down the page in that week and I can go, right, these are the tasks that I have to get done this week. I can then put those tasks into my diary, my weekly diary. I can put those tasks, I can allocate, I can understand how much time do I think they're going to take, and I can start to distribute those tasks into my diary. Every day I can see, how did I go? What do I need to move along? So this is really good self-management practices as much as it is about planning. But I see no purpose in developing great plans if they're not actioned. So hopefully that has reinforced that whole need to display it, use it, tick it off, put it into your diary, take the tasks, put them down into your diary, and stay accountable to it by actually getting somebody to keep you accountable to it. Or you simply being accountable by saying, okay, every week I'm going to send an email to such and such to say, here's what I've achieved against my plan, and they've got my plan. So, don't make it all about their responsibility. Stay responsible to it yourself. Okay. Of course, that's all part of the step 4, which is taking action. So plans unimplemented aren't really worth doing. If you don't intend to implement a plan, my suggestion is don't waste your time doing it. But it's difficult to actually implement anything if you haven't already planned what you are going to implement. So take action by all means. The steps involved were, consider what it is that you want to achieve, create, establish goals that fit the SMART principle, develop that step-by-step plan in the way that I've outlined there, and so it becomes a one-page plan, and make sure that you display it, use it, and you stay accountable to it so that it's actually implemented. Now, is it more difficult than that? Not really. I mean, we can create business plans and marketing plans that go into detail, and that's absolutely fine. And you might find that each one of those sticky notes actually has a set of steps involved in that. But understanding the principle of planning and how to plan and keeping it as simple as possible is a big part of having an effective planning. quarter, personally I sit down and at the start of the year, about this time of the year, of course, I'm planning all of next year, but then each quarter I'm planning each quarter, and I'm actually pulling out those things that I'll do. In fact, I'm looking at my quarterly, this quarter's plan, October, November and December right now, sitting right in front of me, right at my desk. So I'm not telling you something I can't or won't do myself. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some processes, context in terms of why it's important, but it's all well and good to talk about why it's important. You needed the process. Hopefully through that you've got the process. There's some great books around goal setting. Brian Tracy is a good reference for a book just simply called Goals. There are a myriad of books out there. The one thing they won't tell you is what your goal actually is. You have to determine what that is, and that's that's the tough part, right? But how do you formulate that? Well, you've got to look inward, not outward. You've got to really look internally and say, what do I want? What do I want? And what is the business that I want to look like that? And what does it look like when it's finished? So, okay. So wrapping this up, couple of minutes to one, wrapping this up. Here at Breck, we'll be running a planning session in mid-January to do pretty much exactly what we've done there. If you really want to get it done, you might consider booking into our planning session. You can either do that by going to our website and sending us an email, or sending me an email at paulhenshaw@actioncoach.com, or simply giving Darren a call. You write that number down, 0427 405 007. If you want to give him a call, he'll give you the date, the time, and the cost to do that. It will be more likely, we've run them as half-day sessions and all days. Generally they're half-day sessions to really get that down and developed and look at your 2016 and commit to actually doing a plan and not just walking away saying that was a good idea, I think I should do that, and January comes along and you haven't, and you know the drill and you know the story. So this has all been recorded. If you'd like to go and find the replay of this, you'll find it on our website, and in a few days' time you'll find it on the council website, ours is businessreeducation.com.au/webinar recordings. It's all gone to YouTube now, so much easier you don't have to download it, you can watch it direct, and bendigo.vic.gov.au/business. And in the last minute, I guess, of our presentation, I suppose that it would be inappropriate for me not to wish you all a very happy and safe Christmas to everybody. We're only a couple of weeks out. Great time to do your 2016 planning, or straight away when you get back in January is the first thing you do. On behalf of us all at the Business Re-Education Centre, we've really enjoyed presenting these over the year. We've done 11 now, from February right through to December. They're all on the website. Hope you've really gotten a lot out of them. Hope you've actioned, more importantly. So from us at the Business Re-Education Centre, we wish you the Merry Christmas, and of course at City of Greater Bendigo's Economic Development, that's Peter, Jeffrey and all the crew there that he works alongside. He's passed on to do exactly the same. We wish you all a Merry Christmas and a very successful 2016. With that, it's 1 o'clock. I will sign off and wish you again all the best for the festive season 2016, and of course, way beyond that. All the best. Bye for now.